Good morning, everybody. Let's start with introductions. I go by my first name. I don't want to hear any titles, doctor, professor, ma'am, mister, sergeant. Although at some point in the semester you'll probably feel like calling me sergeant. I go by my first name, Babak. Very easy to remember because read in the other direction. The best mode of communication with me is by email. Availability of the teaching staff, especially myself, should never, ever be an issue for you. If for whatever reason you want to meet to discuss anything that's on your mind, what you do is you send me an email and you tell me what your availability is for the coming several days. And among the time slots that you give me, I will pick one and we'll meet in my office, which is at 493 Corey. Now, I want to encourage you to interact with the teaching staff, especially myself. Yeah. eeks.berkeley.edu. Yeah. It's in your interest to make yourselves known to the teaching staff during the course of the semester. Because at the very end, when we meet to decide on your grades, if you happen to fall on a borderline, then what matters is how much I have learned about you through my interactions with you, either in my office or during my office hours, and how much, especially your lab TA, has learned about you during the course of the semester. So we'll have a meeting, and Joey happens to be on the borderline, and we want to decide whether we should bump up Joey or not. And at that point, I'll say, who owns Joey? And one of the TAs says, I own Joey. And I will say, well, does Joey get a thumbs up or thumbs down? And at that point, the investment you've made to make yourselves known to your TA and to show yourselves and to show what you're made of will pay off. Okay? So, come talk to us. We want to meet you. We want to get to know you. It's a large class. It's difficult to be a person and not just a number. So we'll need your help in doing that. Okay? I will have office hours in the Hogan room, which I believe is, what, George? 521? 521 Corey on Thursdays, 6 to 8. Notice my office hours are not in my office. And the reason for that is that my office hours are essentially run like discussion sections. And I often, especially in the fall semester, I get up to 60 people attending. And what I do is I split people into groups of 5. And we plow through the problems and we discuss whatever else is on your mind in terms of the topics that we've been covering. Much of the learning in this class happens during my office hours. And previous students have said that I should make them mandatory. Of course, I don't have the authority to do that. It's your choice whether you want to attend or not. But students have benefited greatly from these interactive sessions. That's also my opportunity to get to know you on a personal basis. So we meet, at 6 o'clock, and we say, okay, which problem do we want to start with first? And somebody will say, a bunch of hands will go up with random numbers. So you'll be the random number generators. And we pick a problem that has the greatest number of votes, and we start plowing through that, and we go as far as we can in the problem set. And in the meantime, we'll also discuss various concepts that we've been covering. So a lot of things become clearer during these sessions. Problem sets are, now the timing for these office hours are such that they are the night before the problem sets are due. So homeworks are due on Fridays, by and large. And I pick my office hours counting on your procrastinating tendencies. So I get a lot of customers during this time. I'll leave that for now. I just came back from an international trip, so I haven't set up the BSpace and the course portal for this class. I haven't updated them. So don't freak out if you go to these two sites and find outdated information. One of the the primary mode of communication between us and you is through the BSpace portal. Okay? I have created a skeleton site. I haven't populated it with much content yet. But what happens is you go here, you log in using your CalNet ID and passphrase, and you should see a tab for EE20 Follow 8. That's where we place all the problem sets. That's where we place all the solutions. And it's through BSpace that we spam you. Okay? During the semester, I expect that on weeknights, you will check your emails just shortly after 9 p.m. We promise we won't send you anything urgent after 9 p.m., or at least we won't hold you responsible for anything we send after 9 p.m. But up to 9 p.m., we may send you anything that's applicable for the following day. So please check your email regularly. Please log into the BSpace site regularly, starting next week. Don't send me any emails until next week with BSpace problems, unless you're a concurrent enrollment student or somehow not officially registered for the class. If you're officially registered, you have nothing to worry about. Your name appears automatically in the roster. But if you're a concurrent enrollment student or a transfer student, or I'm sorry, not a transfer student, or an extension student, or somehow not yet officially registered, then please send me an email and I have to add you manually to the BSpace site. Otherwise, you won't be able to log in. And if you log in, you won't see the tab for the course. The other place where you'll find a lot of information, in particular old exams and Java applets and so on, is at the Ptolemy website, EX Berkeley. Again, I haven't updated this for Follow 8 yet, so if you go there today, you'll see Spring 08 information. So let's say we'll update by next week. The Ptolemy website is a great place for you to play around as we go through various topics in the class, especially because of the Java applets that are in there. You can play around and see simulations of the concepts that we study in this class. And I will count on you, in fact, to do that. Sometimes I will do that in lecture. I'll show you simulations from that site in the class. But that should not be a substitute for you going in and playing around. what do we grade you on? First, let me say something general about how we view your grade. I understand, and the teaching staff understands, that your grade is very important to you, that it will have a direct bearing on your likelihood of getting into a good graduate school, of getting research positions when you approach faculty, and so on. So we take your grade extremely seriously, and that has two ramifications. One is that we take a very heavy burden, especially near the end of the semester, and also during the course of the semester when we grade your exams and your problem sets and your labs, to ensure that the grading is fair and generous. At the end of the semester, when we decide on the grades, I have to go by department policy. The department policy, if you actually go to the EECS website, and you type in the search box grading policy, a couple of pages pop up. One is about undergraduate grading. And if you read it for the EE division, it will tell you that the department wants us to pin the GPA. So this is what the department wants. Pin the GPA at 2.7. I happen to not like that number because I think it's too low. So I take my liberties because the department says anything outside of 2.5 and 2.9, 9, is atypical, and I take that to mean that I can pin it at the upper limit. So at the end of the semester, I will do the grade distributions with the teaching staff so that the class GPA will be pinned around here. Okay? If I could have it my way, I would pin it at 3. But I can't have it my way. So to avoid having somebody in the department tap on my shoulders and give me a headache, I go to the upper limit the department allows. So that's one thing that we'll do to help you out. Some of you may discover or already know that the CS division doesn't even grade based on curves. They grade mostly in a high school type fashion, 90 to 100 is an A and so on. So we don't do that. We grade on a curve. Now, the downside of this is that it has a tendency to create a cutthroat environment. And so what I do is use my experience in my undergraduate school, which was Caltech, where despite all the pressures, there was no cutthroat attitude. And that's because I make sure that you can't survive without giving each other help and taking help from each other. Okay? So one of the keys to success in this course, and I'll have a different board on that, is that you have to work in groups. In everything except what? Huh? Exactly. In everything except exams, I encourage you to work in groups of up to 5 people. But before I get there, let me talk about the details of what we're going to look at in determining your final grade. So your final grade will depend on a final score that we compute for each of you. And that score will be a weighted average of various course components. And those include problem sets or homeworks, which count for 10% of your grade, labs, which count for 10%, quizzes, pop, 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 10%, Exam 1. I'm almost afraid of calling these midterm 1, midterm 2. People, my colleagues in the English department will start having heart attacks. Exam 3. And the final. So exam 1 will contain some review material, some math review material. That's why it's lighter, and I give it a smaller weight, 20%. And each of these other ones is 25%. And that leaves how much for the final? 0%. So we won't have a final exam. I had to balance the pop quiz with something. Actually, I assure you I have purely selfish motives in doing this. So I want to get the heck out of here faster. No, just kidding. There is actually a pedagogical reason. And that is that the material in this class, by nature, is cumulative. If you don't learn the earlier material, you're going to die in the latter material. So even though this third exam will not be comprehensive in the sense that a final exam is traditionally comprehensive, the topics it covers your success in cracking those problems will depend on your fluency with the earlier material. By the way, the topics in this course build on top of each other. So it's inherently doing the job of what a traditional final exam is supposed to do. And that's why we have just 3 exams. Last semester we had 4 exams. That was just too much. So we'll do 3 exams. Now, what do we do? So if you notice, the weights for the homeworks, labs, and quizzes is not a whole lot, especially if you consider them in isolation. 1 homework or 1 quiz or 1 lab. Individually, they don't count for a whole lot. And that's to motivate you further to collaborate with each other and to help each other out. In other words, reduce the cutthroat tendencies. But I go further than that. We will drop the lowest quiz score the lowest 2 homework scores and the lowest lab score. Okay? So if that's again intended to reduce the pressure on you to perform every single week, although you should strive to do that. But the point of this course is not to make your life miserable. The point of this course is to help you learn and to learn the methods of learning. And with this, I hope to reduce the pressure enough that you feel comfortable collaborating with each other, helping each other out, and not freaking out if you miss a particular quiz or if you're late for a problem set. Another corollary of this policy is that I really don't want to get emails from anybody, and I don't want you to send the TA's emails if you're going to miss a particular problem set or if you're going to be late. Just consider it as one of the problem sets that we dropped. Okay? So no extensions on the problem sets. And of course, pop quizzes by nature cannot be made up. If you do encounter a problem that's protracted, that you foresee causing you trouble over the course that spans longer than what this policy allows you in terms of slack, then I definitely want to hear from you. and you should definitely let your TA know that there is a problem. And I guess I haven't defined what your TA means. Each of you will be in a lab section, and your TA for the semester will be your lab TA. Each lab will have a regular full-time TA and a floating TA. And they, in terms of load balancing, they change roles. But the primary section that you'll be assigned will have a regular TA, full-time TA that's going to spend his or her time with you for the entire duration of the lab throughout the semester. And that will be the person you should be interacting with the most. Of course, the larger the number of TAs you interact with and who get to know you, the better off you are. But at the very minimum, you should get to know your lab TA, and your lab TA should get to know you. Let's see. Oh, yeah. This should be obvious. But we obviously can't drop your the lowest exam score. Despite the time frame for this class, I have had students in the past who sleep through the midterm. Actually, this semester we're going to have evening exams, so sleeping through an evening exam takes a lot of skill and determination. You'll be in deep trouble if this happens to you. Almost invariably before the exams, the night before, I send out an email, probably around 2, 3 in the morning, which is when I'm making your exam, telling you to get a life and go to sleep. And those who don't heed my advice may end up paying a big price. So don't skimp on the exam. Make sure you're well rested. This course is not about grunge work. Okay? Actually, that brings me to my next topic, which is keys to success. I used to talk about keys to success in this class. I won't be bold enough to say, write a Deepak Chopra type of book. This is in this class. After every exam, I usually have meetings with students who scored below a cutoff that I determined based on what the class average was. And also open the door for anybody else who wants to talk to me about their performance to come and meet with me individually in my office. And I found myself repeating the same thing over and over again to everybody. So I'll summarize that in this first lecture. Let's see. Number 1. Collaborate. I really can't emphasize this enough. You can't survive this class without working in a group. I've designed it this way. Okay? So some of you who are shy and some of you who are not as well plugged into the social network here are going to have to take an additional burden and fix things. Now, I help you out along the way. So those of you who are freshmen or who are transfer students or concurrent enrollment students and are not yet as well plugged into the social network will probably need some help. So what I do is, probably at the end of next week or early the third week of classes, I run a matchmaking service outside the lecture hall where we try to get people who don't have a group into groups. And usually we go by geographic location of where you live. So people on the south side will get together and we'll split them into groups of 5 and so on. Now, like all other kinds of relationships, marriage, friendship, and other types, things don't always work out. The personal dynamics, working style, schedules, for whatever reason, things may not work out between you and your group. in which case we'll revisit the groupings a few weeks after the initial matchmaking, and we'll see if adjustments need to be made and movements need to happen. So, but I mean, I have to list the same thing as number 2 and 3. That's how important it is. The only constraints are that your group must be less than or equal to 5 currently enrolled. Students. E20 students. I'm married to a lawyer, so I got to be careful what I say. So when you turn in your homework, in preparation for your, as part of the process of plowing through the problems in the problem set, I want you to be working in a group of less than or equal to 5 people. And the other constraint is that you should write the names of your collaborators under yours. Each person will have to turn in their own problem set and their own lab report. But we need you to list the names of all your collaborators. If we find a similarity or unusual similarity between 2 documents and we don't see the names listed, then you run into academic misconduct problems. So this is not a whole lot to ask. If you collaborate, we want you to write the names of your collaborators under yours. And when you turn your work in, it's with the understanding that the document you're turning in is your own bona fide work. I need to say something about this group work. There are people who think they're hotshots and think that working in a group, helping other people who are slower, dumber, not as smart, is a waste of their time. Well, let me tell you, when I was in graduate school, it wasn't until I TA'd these courses like this that I realized how little I had learned as an undergraduate. It's a totally different paradigm when you have to explain what you think you know. Think Rumsfeld here. Things you think you know, things you know, and whatever other nonsense it was in his quotation. Actually, I may have it in this computer. But one of the common comments I hear when I meet individually with students after every exam to discuss what happened is that they tell me, "Oh, I thought I understood all the material. I went over all the old exams, but your new exam didn't look like anything. Didn't look anything like the old exams." And the problem is the underlying assumption that you think you know the material. So try explaining what you think you know to somebody else who's not seemingly as fluent as you are, and you'll see how many gaps there are in your own understanding. Okay, so you benefit by explaining it to others. There are also students who say, "Oh, I feel so behind, I feel ashamed, I feel like I'm burdening the people in my group by asking them to help me out." That obviously is not the case after what I just said. So it's a win-win situation. If you're more fluent with the material, and please do away with the word smart and dumb and all that. I don't want to hear any of that nonsense from any of you when you come meet with me. It's an issue of how comfortable you are with the material. You're all here, people who've been doing admissions for many years have obviously felt that you are up to the standards of the school, and you should be comfortable and confident with that. That if you're here, if you've been admitted, you're cut out for this type of environment. And the rest is just how well you manage your time and how much effort you put into it. So 1, 2, and 3, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. 4, life doesn't end when you turn in a problem set or you leave the classroom after a quiz or the evening session when you take a midterm. So you should always do a post-mortem analysis. There are usually 3 phases with regards to every component in the class. For example, the homework. There's a phase where you're preparing your solutions and discussing things with your classmates, trying to crack the problem. So that's before you turn things in. There's a second phase between the time you turn in your problem set or the time you finish the quiz and walk out and the time we give you the solutions. And then there's a phase, the third phase, which is after you get the official solutions for the class. In each of these phases, you should spend time analyzing what you're working on, what you just turned in, and what we just gave you. Okay? So the collaboration is usually in the first phase of a problem set or a lab analysis. After you turn in the problem set, while the material is still fresh in your mind, or after you've just walked out of a quiz or an exam, while the material is still fresh in your mind, please try to figure out what happened. Because sometimes under time pressure, you may not have thought of a particular solution, and when you go home, half an hour later, you say, oh, I should have known how to do this. This is how you do it. Please do that. Don't wait until we give you the solutions to do that. So during the first phase, when you're collaborating with your peers, you get exposed to multiple ways of approaching a problem. And this happens in your groups. It happens when you come to my office hours. It happens when you're thinking alone at home on how to crack the problem. And as you go through the class, you have this ever-expanding toolbox of tricks and concepts that you acquire. And with practice, you'll get fluent and efficient with using those and cracking new problems. So that's the first phase. Second phase, you add to that toolbox by looking at what just happened under no time pressure. And then when we give you the official solutions, you'll see what we feel is the best way of approaching the problem. And it's not necessarily the best way of doing the problem. Sometimes I hear solutions from my students that are spiffier than what I thought of or what the TAs thought of. So it's all part of a package where you try to look at different ways of cracking a problem, because that's what you're going to be doing as engineers, solving the world's problems. Now, one of the things that I've suggested in the past for students to do is that as we go through the course, let's say you're working on a problem set, create a log. And this is just the suggested format. You can modify it to your taste and add bells and whistles if you wish. But this is what I suggest. Create a log with 3 columns. Concepts, coordinates, and techniques. Okay? You're looking at problem 1.1, homework 1.1, part A. When you read the problem, you ask yourself, what in the world is this problem expecting of me? What am I supposed to do? What concepts is it testing? Let's say I'm testing the concept of linearity of a system. Don't worry about what linearity is. It's a concept. We'll talk about it later in the class. Linearity. You figure out that it's talking about linearity. And let's say identifying whether a system is linear or not. its coordinates are at this problem. Or it's going to be in quiz 1.1a in spring '08 if you're reviewing for an exam and you're doing old exams and you come across the same thing. So that's what I mean by coordinates, where a particular concept is tested. Okay? And then, as you discuss things with your group mates, or as you're sitting at home trying to crack the problem, have some kind of a shorthand method of describing what technique you use to identify whether a system is linear or not. And you do this with all the concepts. So students who have used this technique after I met with them following the first exam or the second exam and have implemented this, it's kind of awkward. It's a bizarre way of looking at things. I certainly never did this when I was an undergrad. But students who paid attention to this and implemented this told me that their performance, actually I saw that their performance improved significantly in subsequent exams. So it's awkward to start doing this initially, but after you do it, it becomes second nature to you. And it has the following benefit. When you go to the upcoming exam, there is no ambiguity. There is no reason to be anxious and say, oh, have I studied everything I needed to study? Because you have it all listed. All the concepts that we've been covering are listed in your first column. You will know which subset of these concepts you're not as comfortable with, and you can focus your studying on those. You know exactly where to find practice problems for those. And you know exactly what should be in your toolbox of tricks of the trade. Is that clear? Okay. So I think these, let's see, is there anything else for? Oh yeah, there's a fifth item, which should really be a corollary of what I've said here. And that is that this class is about working smart. I said let's not use that dumb word. Working efficiently, not hard. This class is not about you going home and banging your head against the wall, trying to crack the problems. Okay? One of the things I do at the end of the semester, after you take your last exam, and before you get to find out what your last exam score is that I ask you to send me an email with 2 paragraphs, reasonable length, describing what grade you feel you deserve in the class and why. And also in the second paragraph, use it as an opportunity to tell me if you encountered any extraordinary situations which hindered your performance. And we study all those emails. And if you happen to be on a borderline case, we discuss those emails at the last staff meeting and see if there's a case to be made for bumping you up. So one of the comments I hear a lot in those emails is that I worked so hard in this class and I still didn't do well. And that's not a comment I can use or latch onto to bump you up with. Because this class is not about working hard. This class is about learning how to work efficiently and to learn the learning methodologies and figuring out how to crack the puzzles of the world. Okay, a lot of times if you look at the old exams, and you'll find out when you're reviewing old exam problems in preparation for your exams this semester, you'll see that the solutions are usually very short. And they don't require a whole lot of work, but they require deep understanding of the concepts. So in the exams that we give you in this course, let's say on a 2-hour exam, it's possible for you to leave after 45 minutes if you know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you'll be banging your head against the wall for the entire 2 hours, and you still won't be done. So this class is about learning the techniques, the efficient techniques to cracking seemingly new problems. I can guarantee you that the problems you see in this class on the exams will look on the surface to be very different, look very different from what you'll see in old exams. But if you probe deeply, the concepts that I test are exactly the same concepts that I've been teaching for the past several semesters. And making that connection is part of your job. And it's initially very hard. It's disorienting at first because that's not what most of the educational institutions that you've been passing through teach you. In high school, it's all about formulaic applications. You want to they teach you how to plug in numbers into a recipe. That's not what this course is about. All right. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention is that we have this scheme in this class whereby you have the right to interrupt me and demand a break. And that scheme is the bonsai break. I have to tell you the story before I give you that break. I don't know how to spell it. We haven't agreed on a spelling. So, I was at an education workshop a couple of years ago in Wyoming, and one of the representatives from National Instruments was telling me a story. People who work for companies like National Instruments have to go around different companies and different universities to try to sell their products. So this gentleman had gone to a university to try to meet a big shot professor. And as he was approaching the professor's lecture hall, he heard people, and he saw people standing up and saying, "Bonsai! Bonsai! Bonsai!" And he had no idea what the heck was going on. So he asked the instructor, what was all that about? And he says, that's my way of giving students breaks and helping them regain their concentration. There's actually scientific basis for that. And I want to share that with you. So here's time. Here's your concept retention, or conceptual understanding. Okay? Time 0 is the start of class. The curve is like this. It rises, peaks at about 10 minutes. And if I don't stop, like I haven't in this class, it goes right like that. So the point of giving you these breaks and allowing you to demand these breaks, I usually try to be good with this. I haven't given you anything heavy duty, so that's why I've taken the liberty of going farther, is to reset your clock. Okay? So about every 10 to 15 minutes, I try to give you a break. Now, these breaks take different forms. They're either completely artificial breaks. I'll just stop and say, do whatever you want, go to the bathroom, pound each other on the head, chat with each other, throw frisbees, whatever. Or I will put a problem on the board, and as part of my scheme to encourage group work, I will say, okay, I want you to talk to the two people to your right and to your left. Put your brains together and try to solve this. And invariably, I give you more time than is needed to solve that problem, particularly because I want to use that opportunity so that you can get to know each other's names and you get to chat a bit beyond the point where you solve the problem. So that becomes your break. So we have this overall package where I try to encourage group work. I try to keep you keep you interested in coming to lecture. I want you to enjoy these lectures, and I want them to be as interactive as possible. It's very hard for two reasons, especially in the fall semesters. You see this class is full. I think we have about 235 students right now enrolled in the class. In the spring semester, it goes down to 80, so it's much easier to implement this and to make this a personal experience in the spring. But I found that traditionally, in a totally counterintuitive way, that my fall semester classes are much livelier. And I hope this semester is no exception. So I want you to enjoy your time in class. I want you to do the group work and get to know each other better. The more you know each other, the more comfortable you are collaborating. And you stay focused. So it's all part of the whole wholesome, holistic way of approaching teaching. Now, occasionally I forget. And that's when usually a bunch of loudmouths in the class will say, "Bonsai!" And I just stop, or I'll say, "Give me 30 more seconds to wrap up this concept," and then you take a break. Okay? So shyness should have no place in your approach in this class. In fact, I recommend that you do away with shyness in this whole school, because otherwise you'll lose out. You can't afford to be shy around here or on this campus. All right, with that, Bonsai! Take 3-4 minutes.
there are some concerns about what's happening with disruptions in lab. I think you'll address that.
Okay, folks, let's settle down. This occupied much longer than I had expected. Oh, one thing about this note here, by the way. As informal as I am, with you calling me by my first name, just please don't start your emails with, hey. That just ticks me off. Ooh. I had a question about the timing of the midterms during the semester. We're working on the scheduling because I have to see what my other colleagues who teach courses that you may be taking, or a large number of you may be taking, before I decide on the final dates. But I can say the following. Exam 1 will be before drop day. In particular, we'll time it so that we have enough time to grade it and for you to look at it before you decide to do anything crazy like dropping the class. And exam 3 will be in the last week of class. Last week of classes. And all exams are evening exams. So exam 2 will be roughly equally spaced from the other two. I should use the lawyerly weasel out clause. That's what I'm looking for. Roughly equally spaced from the other two. Okay? But the exact dates we'll figure out once I see when the EE40 exams and Physics 7B exams and all that stuff is. By the way, how many of you are freshmen first term? No, it's lower than previous semesters. I want you to start this course with serious caution, because a lot of freshmen in previous semesters, in fall semesters, have had a lot of difficulty with this class. And one of the things I usually ask in the first lecture is, actually this is a question to everybody, is can you walk on water? And unless you're darn sure that you can walk on water, don't take this class as a first-term freshman. And don't take more than one other heavy-duty technical subject beside this one. So another comment I hear a lot of at the end of the semester when I ask you to send me those 2-paragraph emails is that I overstretched myself. In fact, the very first response I ever got when I tried this scheme of asking people to tell me what grade they feel they deserve and why was by a student who responded to me in less than half an hour after I posted the announcement, who said, I didn't give your course the attention it deserved, so if I'm on the borderline, do not bump up. Most other people say, I just should have listened to you, and I shouldn't have taken CS 150, Physics 7B, EE40, and EE20, and Math 104 or whatever at the same time. Okay? This is a heavy-duty subject. I told you this is not about spending a lot of time, but it requires focus. And if you're spreading yourself thin, you're likely to run into trouble. Now, I have had students who take, like one of your TAs there, the crazy guy George, who can take oodles and oodles of units and still do well in all his courses. And that's why he's a TA for the class as an undergraduate. But not everybody's like George. It's not about being smart again. It's about how well you manage your time. Time management is very important, and especially if you're a first semester freshman or a transfer student, you should be very careful with the kind of load you take. Now, transfer students don't have as much luxury as freshmen in terms of how many or how few units they take, because they're under time pressure. They have to catch up with some courses, and they have a limited time to complete their degrees. So in terms of transfer students, I understand the situation. But if you're a freshman, there's absolutely no reason for you to take this class in your first semester. Again, I have had students who took it and did well, but by and large, the rest of them had a lot of difficulty. So you try to enjoy your first semester and try to use the time to get used to the environment here. It's very different from a high school environment, and if you're a transfer student, it's very different from a community college environment and from many other universities. It's a fast-paced joint, especially our department. Let's see. That was that. And what was it, George, that you... Oh, discussions and labs. So did you... Who didn't get my email from BSpace yesterday about discussion sections? Are you enrolled? And you didn't get it? Check your... If you didn't get it, check... The first step is to check your spam folder and see if it's in there. If the problem persists, then definitely talk to me next week, and we'll see what's going on. Okay. But I sent an email announcement saying that there are no discussion sections and no labs this week. There will be no labs next week either, right, George? No labs next week, right? No, the right answer is if you say so. Just kidding. No, there are no labs next week, but there will be discussions next week. The labs are more restrictive in this class than the discussion sections. So I don't particularly expect you to go to the discussion section that the registrar insists that you go to, because we're usually flexible. It's in a classroom. Unless it's really packed, then we're not going to have a problem with you going to one that is more convenient for you. But we can't do that with the labs, because the labs have 30 machines, and that's our upper bound hard limit. We can't have 31 people in a lab. It's that simple. So with labs, we're going to have to be a lot stricter in terms of where you are. Now, we will do some swapping and so on once the TAs figure out what their schedules are and what discussion sections we can keep and which ones we have to scrap, and what lab sections we can keep and which ones we can scrap. But until then, don't worry about the labs. So we'll probably revisit the lab situation late next week. And the discussion sections, just attend whatever you want next week. And we'll see if we usually haven't bumped into major problems. These wrinkles have a tendency to iron themselves out. Okay, so I want to show you some goodies. Oh, before I go there, one thing about classroom etiquette. The guiding principle in this classroom should be that whatever activity disrupts the concentration of your neighbors and fellow students is not allowed. That means if you're opening up a laptop, it had better be for taking notes. I don't want anybody surfing the web with an open laptop. I reserve the right to demand notes for this class by whoever has an open laptop. Turn off your cell phones and mobile devices or put them on silent mode. And if you bring food into the class, it should be such that when you consume it, it should not create smell, and it should not create noise. So no potato chips, no carrots, no great tasting ethnic food which we all love, but which has no place in a classroom, especially one as packed as this one. Okay, but in general, anything that disrupts the concentration and the attention of your fellow students, whether they're the ones who are sitting next to you or behind you or in front of you, is not allowed. So please use your best judgment in doing that. And the last item, administrative item, before I give you some demos of kinds of things that signal processing people do, is about academic misconduct. And it's a topic I never like to discuss, but which I have no choice to discuss. I have the welfare of 235 students in my trust. As such, I do not have the prerogative of forgiving academic misconduct, because any student who cheats or who in any way takes unfair advantage of his or her fellow students is infringing on the rights of people whose welfare has been placed in my trust. And I just don't have the prerogative of forgiving that. If you do some wrong to me, I do have the prerogative of forgiving it. But I don't have that prerogative when a student violates other people's rights. So we prosecute academic misconduct vigorously. We have ways of figuring out cheating on exams, on homeworks, and labs. And I've done, after everything I've described that we do to reduce the pressure and the motivation to do that, if we discover that, and we have in the past, I will prosecute those cases vigorously. And it will make the life of the violators very miserable. And it will make the life of the teaching staff very miserable, because it's not a fun aspect of my job as a teacher. So please be very careful not to even get close to gray areas when it comes to how you perform and how you behave in this class. We want everybody to have a great time. We want everybody to learn. And one of the things that makes this class very difficult for me, in addition to its large size, is that it's a required class, and even CS majors have to take it. So that makes my job and the job of the teaching staff that much more difficult. But if previous semesters are any indication, even people who had to drag themselves into this class at the start of the semester ended up enjoying it by the end of the semester. So, and we want the same to be true this time. So with that note, let me see if I can hook up the computer and show you some of the things that we do.